Witnesses say a suspect wearing a security guard uniform armed with a knife went on the attack inside the Crossroads Mall in the city of St. Cloud. Police swarming the area, putting the mall on lockdown as shoppers ran for safety in the chaos. At least 8 people were stabbed, police revealing the man made references to Islam.
That individual made some references to Allah, and we have confirmed that he asked at least one person if they were Muslim before he assaulted them.
Next, we have Solidarity with the Muslim Community Resolution condemning violence and hate speech. And all in approval of that resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And next, we have the resolution that was added by Councilmember Gordon at the beginning of the meeting, the One Minneapolis Resolution. Passage of a resolution standing with all members of our One Minneapolis, and I will invite Councilmember Gordon to introduce the resolution.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President, and I would like to read the resolution. This resolution, I think it's safe to say, was drafted in response to the national election, and also in support, I think, of a powerful statement that the mayor put out after that as well. It is entitled Standing with All Members of Our One Minneapolis. Whereas the Muslim and Jewish members of our community are welcome in our city and have the same right to religious freedom as any other person, Christians and people of faith or of no faith. And whereas the City Council of the City of Minneapolis has adopted a resolution condemning violence and hate speech, expressing solidarity with Muslims and all those targeted for their ethnicity, race, or religion today. And whereas the immigrant and refugee members of our community, documented or undocumented, bring hope, optimism, and entrepreneurial spirit, along with the diversity of cultural expression that keeps our city vibrant. And whereas Title II, Chapter 19 of the Minneapolis Code of Ordinances states that the city does not operate its programs for the purpose of enforcing federal immigration laws, and that public safety officials shall not undertake any law enforcement action for the purpose of detecting the presence of undocumented persons or to verify immigrant status, including but not limited to questioning any person or persons about their immigration status. And whereas the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer members of our community have the right to express love, commitment, and gender identity with equal protection from the law. And whereas the City Council of the City of Minneapolis adopted a resolution approving the month of November 16th to be recognized as Transgender Awareness Month in the City of Minneapolis on November 18th today. And whereas people of color in Minneapolis are working to challenge and overcome the legacy of institutional racism and need all community members to stand together to clearly and unapologetically focus on dismantling systems of oppression at all levels, not creating new ones. And whereas the indigenous peoples of Minneapolis have survived repeated destructive genocidal acts and yet retain the rights of sovereign nations to defend ancestral lands, resources, languages, cultures, and the seventh generation. And whereas the women of Minneapolis deserve equality and respect at home, in the workplace, and in public. And whereas the disabled people of Minneapolis deserve respect and equal accommodation and inclusion in all spaces. And whereas the people of Minneapolis recognize that people of all races, ethnicities, and backgrounds all do better when we all do better together. And whereas all members of our community deserve to live healthy, happy, rewarding lives free of fear as befits our status as human beings. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Minneapolis and the City Council that the City of Minneapolis stands with all members of our community. We reject the politics of division, bigotry, hate, and fear. We will fight for the rights, freedoms, and interests of all members of our community, no matter the color of our skin, our gender, the way we worship, where we were born, our sexual orientation, or any other identity. We are and will continue to be one Minneapolis. Be it further resolved that the City Council and Mayor reaffirm our commitment to be a sanctuary city in which we build and maintain positive relations between city employees and all the members of the communities we serve. Be it further resolved that the City of Minneapolis encourages all other units of government to join us in standing with all members of our community.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. That resolution has been moved. Is there any discussion or comment on the resolution? Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Yesterday I attended the deportation hearing of one of our DREAM activists here in Minneapolis, and it was a very significant time for all of us to reflect on the realities moving forward of how we're going to have to, be at our most alert stance and position moving forward, because there's just going to be more of these cases coming down in the coming weeks and months and years. So I want to thank Councilmember Cam Gordon for leading on this resolution. And I think now more than ever, the role of cities is going to matter in standing up for and protecting our communities, and in continuing to advance our very progressive legacy, our Wilstonian legacy, our social justice efforts that some of us here in the council support. And so looking forward, I think that's going to shape a lot of our conversations as a council in terms of what we're willing to do to really step up and be able to uplift our immigrant community in new and different ways that we've never been challenged to do before. And I think we'll see some of those votes come down on December 7th when we have our budget approval, and when some of these initiatives will be brought forward to see how this council can better represent immigrant communities and take up a different type of role in addressing not only the fear, but the very direct and aggressive policies that are being directed towards our immigrant, refugee, people of color communities. And looking forward, we know that the community will be organizing more. We know that the advocacy groups are coming together, and in previous months, and perhaps even a year or so ago, the council had supported work around the DACA and DAPA initiatives that President Obama had put into motion. And there was a staff work group that was created to help different departments come together and talk about that issue and see ways that our municipality could be supportive. And I've asked our staff to pick up that work again and to look at what other cities are doing, have those conversations internally, work with us as council members to figure out what is it that we're going to be able to do, and what is the new role that we're going to have to fulfill as a municipality to prepare for some of the most, I think, horrific actions in our lifetimes. And on that note, I want to invite people to a meeting and a conversation that Councilmember Glidden spearheaded, which is supported by many of us in the council, and it's supported by many, many partners in the community, as well as state elected officials. And it is happening on Tuesday, November 22nd, and it'll be from 5:30 to 8:30 at Sabathani Community Center, located at 310 East 38th Street. And it is titled United in Love and Action, and it's a response to hate, bigotry, and misogyny in our community. So I hope that many of you as council members can attend. I hope that you let us know ahead of time in case there's any open rule issues and open meeting issues. And then I hope that many of our community members can come help us build a plan to respond to the raids and deportations, help us build a coordinated response to the hate crimes that we are seeing happening even on election day. I got an email from a constituent saying that a Latina woman was hit in the head by someone who ran after her, saying, "Go back to Colombia." And this was just on election day. And since then, we know that there's been many groups that have been receiving reports of hate crimes. So I look forward to working with everyone in a more united form in the courageous and bold manner that we will need to work in the next year.
Councilmember Andrew Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate the comments of all of my colleagues. I'll just say that I'm a pretty young person, but in my life, I've never seen such division in this country before. And I sure hope that the new leaders at a federal and certainly at a state legislator level use this moment and this opportunity to bring people together and not further divide the nation with attempts at pitting cities against rural areas, with attempts at pitting some members of our community against others, and instead work with folks across the aisle on good issues that we can all agree on. And that would be my only hope out of this, is that we don't see that divide grow, but that we see people step up to the responsibility and the moment and try to bring each other together. And because, a lot of important things are at stake, especially when we look at and think about LGA funding and the impact that it would have. And if we think about as well, for instance, how our sanctuary city status helps progress public safety, because when folks are witness to crimes or victims of crimes, we don't want them to hesitate calling 911. So I would just offer those words to our new leaders out there.
Councilmember Borsami.
Thank you very much, Council Vice President Glidden, and I would like to thank Council Member Cam Gordon for the resolution. And as someone who's a student of history and a student of European history, I'd like to thank Councilmember Jacob Fry for the comments that he made, because what we're seeing right now is very similar to what happened in the last century. You see the vilification of an entire religion, done casually, without any remorse, and done by now the elected president of the United States, and the nominated Attorney General of the United States, the nominated CIA Chief of the United States, the nominated Head of National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. These individuals and many more who will be in the cabinet, and many more who are heading our country, who will be heading our country next month or next couple of months, have suggested that we should have a registry for American Muslims. Suggested that there's a precedent that was done in history when Japanese Americans were put in camps. The Second World War, innocent Japanese Americans. So we are in a very difficult and very dangerous moment. And as someone who cannot change his skin color, nor change his name, and who's raising 3 black children in the city of Minneapolis, it brings back haunting memories of what happened to people just like myself less than a century ago, who didn't do anything, who were innocent, and who are being blamed for the actions of very few individuals. So this is a very dangerous time, and I thank Councilmember Cam Gordon for the resolution. I'd like to thank also Councilmember Vice President Glidden for the work she's done on this, and for bringing the community together, and for this meeting that she's hosting on Tuesday. I'd like to thank all my colleagues, because you've welcomed me, you've worked with me, you've been very respectful, even though there's been some biases here and there. But I would say overall, people have been very supportive of myself and my community, and I'd like to appreciate everything everybody's done for us. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I just wanted to extend my gratitude towards Councilmember Gordon for the resolution, and for my colleagues who are supporting the resolution. And, my colleague, Councilmember Borsami, mentioned this Muslim registry, and just the talk of that and the justification for that. And, I grew up in the Central Valley area where these camps were, and these were just horrific and embarrassing. And, I think about all this stuff, and I just think, my goodness, these were some of the darkest times in American history. And to see and hear folks justify their stupidity by pointing to these things as justification just terrifies me. And, I don't know about other folks, and, I just want to be very simple about this, but I will fight like hell to not allow anything like that to ever happen again in American history, but specifically in Minneapolis, because that should never happen. That sort of discrimination, that sort of hate should not exist in our world today. So I will leave it at that.
So with that, I am not seeing any further discussion requested. I just want to say thank you to all my colleagues, and I'm proud to work with you. All in approval of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next, we have new business.